Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our Conscious Health podcast. And today's topic, we are going to discuss a very interesting way of living, which is how we use stress and turn it into resilience. And by doing that, we can rewire our brain. So, how do we face frustrations? How do we face pain or painful situations? All of those topics are going to be touched in today's episode, and we are going to discuss the science part and the spirituality side so that we can merge those two realms. And of course, thank you, Natasha, for being here as well and discussing this interesting topic. So let's start with, what do we do when we feel pain? What do we how do we resist sometimes to be in pain, and we alleviate the pain with these quick remedies and quick solutions of taking a pill and just trying to cope with symptoms in a less disturbing way, but we are also debilitating our own resilience to heal ourselves, to let the body do the work, and we are taking shortcuts to recover. No.
Yeah, we are for sure. I know for pain when it comes to a spirit. Okay, we don't escape this planet without having some kind of pain, whether it be physical, mental, emotional pain. We don't. It's part of being on this planet. It's part of our spiritual journey. It's part of our expansion. It's part of our purpose. Now, a lot of the times when we look at pain, it means that there's some kind of a resistance. So I tend to see pain as a resistance to our natural self. I tend to see pain as a messenger to tell us that something is wrong or something has been suppressed. When I look at pain or resilience, I usually tend to have a look at it from, my belief is it starts on a mental level. Whether depending on the conversations we're having with ourselves, the environments that we're in, the conditioning that we've been given, not only from my parents, our peers, our teachers, our culture, our country, society. Like there's so much that is involved, and usually we feel pain when we're not in alignment with our true being, our who we are in this world. When we're not following our own vibration, our own blueprint. When we do that, pain starts to diminish. And a lot of the times we find ourselves, especially when we're stressed, we're burnt out, our body is usually the last protocol that turns around and goes, stop, enough. Although it does give us signals, and we've spoken about this on the show, where it's kind of like, hey, here's a bit of a cold, time to slow down and nurture yourself. Hey, here's a bit of a bigger cold. Hey, here's pneumonia, or here, whatever's going on in the body. So the body tends to give us quite a big indication of what's going on. And I see pain really as like a flashlight, telling us that we're out of alignment with our true self, or that there's some sort of a clearing, or something is going on with us. And it's about getting curious about that, and how we deal with it. And one of the things that you said is, do we take that quick pill? And sometimes medication is needed, but I usually tend to look at, okay, what is and sometimes we suffer from the opposite side, where we'll let it go on for too long before we go and see a doctor. Right. And then the doctor's like, you could have been here 2 weeks ago and I don't have to give you antibiotics, or whatever it is. Kind of like talking about my mom. I mean, we grew up in the sense of like, she jokes. She even, like yesterday, she was joking with us because my daughter was saying that there's some kind of like flu virus going around in her class, and 50% of the kids aren't there, right? So my mom started laughing and she says, just give them 2 aspirins and send them off to school. Because that's what she used to do to us, right? She was just like, whatever, just, suck it up, buttercup, and off you go to school, kind of just do it. So that there's that aspect. It's, where do you draw the line? But for me, I get really, really curious as to okay, what's going on in my body? What is my body telling me? And where did it start? Because from all the work that I've done through craniosacral and the Akashic records, there's always a reason behind it,
Mhm.
right? There's always, whether it's a somatic emotional, which we had Kim talk about, somatic work, our body keeps that vibrational frequency of the pain, the suffering that we've created. And I do know from an Akashic perspective that when we are going through something stressful or painful, that it almost forces us to be or step into that person that we need to save us, right? We need to become that person, that create that resilience, or just push forward. This is a very big topic. I don't know. What are your thoughts, David?
I love the way that you make this analogy of a flashlight
Yeah.
because it is an alarm system. That's the way it is known in terms of the physiology that we need to awaken and trigger and understand what is happening with us. And there is, of course, also such a thin line, and we were discussing this before we started, that there is a very thin line between not doing anything when you feel pain and doing something very quick to numb the pain that can also make you have more chronic symptoms in the long run. No, because many times when we feel that pain, and for example, the story that you are telling about your mom and saying take two pills and go to the to the
Go
to,
to
to the
school.
school. No, we used to do that, and many times we do it. We take pills to go to work. We take pills to sleep. We take pills to do have a stomach ache, and we
Yeah.
disguise the real symptom, or we uh, make the body, let's say, it won't sound good, but it is the truth. Lazy. We make the body lazy. We make the body unable to trigger the alarm system because it's just going shutting down. It's like listening to. Well, I'm going to add an example from Mexico because here we have a lot of earthquakes many times, and during the year we have very small earthquakes and others that set up an alarm system. So when an earthquake goes beyond 5 in the scale of Richter, let's say, we have this alarm system sounding, and everybody is scared, and everyone knows what to do.
Yeah.
But that's what your body does. You have a threshold of pain, and when you go up that threshold, your body is going to activate an alarm system, which is that pain that is telling you to stop, to rest, to
Mm-hmm.
recover, to rethink. Sometimes it's just uh, trying for you to catch the message that you
Yeah.
have to stop and pause and breathe and
Mm-hmm.
react and rethink what you are going to do. But when we don't listen to that and we just take the pill, we go on, and then the body says, okay, so I'm not going to activate anything. So next time you have something similar, you won't feel pain, and probably you will have a higher threshold.
Yeah.
So then you are raising the threshold, and you are creating also sort of a resistance towards the drugs that you are consuming. So probably if you take one aspirin in the first case, you will shut down the pain. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe in 2 or 3 months that you again have something similar, you will need two aspirins, not just
Mm.
one. And then in 6 months, if you have another case of the similar pain, you will take three pills. And then you keep growing and growing until you fool your system with pills. And then that kind of pharmaceutical drug or active ingredient is not going to do anything in your body. So you will have to switch to a higher, let's say, capacity of drug that it will ease the pain. And you will upload and you will upload and you will get into this crisis that many of the Americans suffer with opioids, for example. They had a very huge crisis of opioids because people was in chronic pain and they were taking these pills like they were candies. So they really make a lot of damage into their own systems and they shut down these alarms that we need. And we are going to explain how these alarms start working, no?
It's so interesting because when we look at it from kind of like a spiritual perspective, or an Akashic perspective, the belief is that we come to this planet to explore certain themes, and the themes continue to show up for us until we resolve them, right? So, and I used to joke around. I used to go, you find yourself dating the same type of jerk over and over again, or you find yourself back in kind of like a cycle of overworking, or putting your self-care to the side, or you find yourself back into that cycle of busy, or you find yourself back into a cycle of whatever. But these cycles will continue until we solve the root of the problem. So with us not going in and going, okay, what is the origin of this headache? What does it mean? So like, or looking at that, pain as to getting curious about it and going, why is it there? Right? Because, and it's only when I started on this journey did I start looking at kind of like being encouraged to really look and see the pain, right? Whether it's physical, mental, emotional, as a teacher, to see it as a teacher, not just something to like fix. Because if we put a band-aid on it, no, I don't know like what's happening underneath the surface, it's still there. It doesn't mean that it goes away. Like you say, we just mask it and it'll continue to surface, but we'll have to mask it even heavier because we're ignoring it even more, because it's like, and our children do this. Like, I don't know, for those of you that have teenagers, like they think that or kids that have cell phones, they think that we're wired to them all the time. So it's almost kind of like I'll get a message and I'll be like, mom, 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 mom. And I think that's what our body does. It goes, hey, you need to work on this. And we go like, oh, whatever, here's a Band-Aid, here's a pill. And then it goes, hey, and then it does another one. And then until it's just shouting louder until we actually deal with it, right? And I think that's because also written in our soul's blueprint, this is a theme we've come to explore and overcome. And if we keep suppressing it and not looking at it, it'll show up in different ways in your relationships, in your work, in your, friendships, like everywhere. It will show up for you to deal with it. But that's the beautiful thing about it, is that it will keep showing. It's a continued opportunity that if you're not ready to deal with it, it's like hitting the snooze button. The alarm will go off again if you don't wake up and deal with it, right?
You reminded me of another analogy with the seatbelt in your car. When you are going beyond the limit that it needs to sound, it won't stop. The alarm won't stop until you fasten your seatbelt. So that's the same thing that will happen. But we sometimes become deaf to the pain, and we don't listen to the signals. And as you mentioned, many times, I think, or 90% of the time, this pain has a meaning and has an underlying emotional factor that is trying to alert us about something that we are derailing our lives into the spiral of making a chaotic situation, no, and a worse situation. And if we don't listen, of course, we will have the consequences that sometimes they are very tragic because we were behaving like teenagers, no, like don't listening and trying to be like I can do everything, and I can withstand this and whatever. I'm young and things like that. So that's not the way it is. And talking about this kind of physiology that happens in our body, we have these peripheral sensors around our body, and they are called nociceptors. They are called these receptors of pain, and they are specialized nerve endings. It's just the nerve ending in the skin, in the muscles, in the organs to detect harmful stimuli like heat, like pressure, like chemical irritation, or any kind of disturbance that your body is feeling through these sensors. And these signals of pain are transmitted with the spinal cord, and these signals travel via the spinal thalamic. Now, this is another term that relates to the your tract, to the thalamus, to the brain's sensory, let's say, hub station, and they make a processing. So now they have to be classified into what is the kind of pain that you are feeling. Somatosensory, that means that is your body telling you that something is giving you pain, and it is identifying where and how intense the pain is. And I think that we can play with that, because when we are pinching our finger, let's say with a needle, if we just push a little bit, you won't feel pain, probably. You will feel discomfort, but not pain. If you keep going beyond with more pressure, you will start to feel the pain. So this is the intense and the place and the intensity of what kind of pain you are having. And we have another areas of the brain which are called the insula or the anterior cingulate cortex, and those process emotional and affective dimensions of the pain. So it's this feeling of ouch, like I'm hurt, I'm feeling this hurt, no? And then there is this area of the prefrontal cortex that evaluates the meaning, and this is the one that can help us in terms of the emotional pain and the context and the potential responses to pain, no? So
Yeah.
it is a very complex mechanism that is has to interpret the pain. But if we don't even have this time and these phases that we need to identify, we will make these processes, let's say, delayed, and we will make them stop and don't think about the
Yeah.
pain that you are facing and just coping. And then you enter into this spiral of surviving, no?
Yeah, and it's incredible what the mind does as well, right? Our mind, and it's like, and that's one thing. Like my mom's always like, she taught us because like she was like, your mind controls your body. She's always said that, right? So it's almost kind of like that resilience, and sometimes. So it's so interesting because a lot of because I also process things a lot fast. Like I process once I understand it. So I've created a process in dealing with pain or dealing with uncomfort or discomfort in the sense where I get really, really curious about it. And I do try and feel it 100% because I think that by avoiding it, and in my world as well, there's something called spiritual bypassing
Mm.
where it's almost like you feel that you always have to have a high vibration, which is true, but it's how you respond to all situations of life is what's important. It's not about, I feel that all emotions have equal, like they're equally as important. Fear, anger, love, joy, they're all important. And in the sense of spirituality, sometimes we tend to say, no, 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 we have to be in this, constantly being, in the space of joy. And that's not accurate either, because like you're saying, these receptors come to tell us, hey, something's up here. We need to have a look at it. and we do need to not sweep it under the carpet, but really, really have a look at it, because all of a sudden that carpet's going to have like a big bolt that eventually you can't walk over it, right? But it's almost kind of like, and Mateus talks about this, where you become the something. So it's like almost like we need to become the fire, we need to become the water, we need to embody that energy completely before we understand it. So I was thinking about it as you were speaking. We're coming up to fall or autumn, where it's a layer of letting go.
Mhm.
Right. And letting go is hard because we need to realize what it is and identify it before we let it go. And so interesting that it's happening at this moment. I know I'm getting a little bit woo out here, but it's the planet is in a 9 year, right? So, so 2025 is
Yeah.
2 + 2 + 5 is a 9 year. 9 years in the end of a cycle. So
Mhm.
a lot of people, as we're coming to the end of the year, and I was talking to this to a friend of mine, I said, she goes, "How are you doing?" I said, "You know what? I feel like I'm firefighting right now. Like everything seems to be like, okay, what's the next thing?" And I said to her, "But it's good, because if you look at it from a different perspective, like feeling it head on and working with it, because I have a tendency to procrastinate sometimes just because I'm busy. So it's like, what is the latest thing?" So that's kind of like pushed me to a sense of saying, okay, I'm done procrastinating, or why am I procrastinating? Jumping into that and going, what is the resistance? Is there something that's not in alignment? Is there a better way of doing it? Or am I just choosing not to do it, like sweeping it under the carpet? So it's brought in a different kind of like looking at myself, but what am I releasing? And I said to her, I think we're letting go of a lot of old patterns that are coming up. So just because we're ending this year of a cycle, we all have our own personal cycles as well, numerologically, but on a grander scheme of things, what's happening internally is also happening externally in our lives. So it's quite interesting to see what's happening in our environment to what's happening internally within us as well, right? So, because one always mirrors the other. So with flu season coming up, you had me thinking. I was like, okay, usually what happens is we get a lot of colds, we get a lot of flus. What is that? Usually it's connected into our lungs, which is looking at grief. A lot of the time, unresolved grief that we hold in our lungs, or it's in our throats, where we're learning how to speak our truth and speak up for ourselves and to be seen and to be heard, and where we're learning to listen. A
Mm.
lot of the times we don't listen, which is important, but it's all this area that usually tends to come up at this time of the year. And again, it's that aspect of letting go. It's our bodies reflecting that season that is coming up. And I think we as humans tend to hold on to what we know. And that creates that resistance to that healing, or that resistance to looking at things, because it's what we know. So that, I think, is also always reflected in the body as well, which is important.
It's so synchronistic that you mention this kind of story, also a narrative, because I recently had a pain in my feet, in my right feet,
Oh,
and near the heel,
mm-hmm,
and I was looking for the meaning of the pain and why it happened, because I said, I mean, this is the same kind of exercise that I have done, so it shouldn't be caused by the exercise. So I look for something deeper, no? And I discovered that this kind of pain in your feet, whether it is in the area that I have it or in other area of your feet, it relates to understanding yourself more and
mm-hmm,
having clarity in what you want in your life. And I just took some moments to think about it and to sense the things. And I agree with you that many, in my case also, I have been procrastinating also deliver, I mean, releasing my second book, and I have been over and over reviewing it and doing things with it, but not finishing and just releasing. And I said, well, this is the confusing part. No, I think this is what is happening, and the direction that I want to take with everything that I'm doing right now,
Yeah.
and what kind of future do I see to for myself, and all of those things were in my mind with this kind of pain. And suddenly, in just like 2 or 3 days of reflecting about it and meditating about it, the pain has gone. So it is just sometimes to give yourself this reflection time
Yeah.
and evaluate yourself and assess what you are doing with your life. And as you mentioned, I also believe in these numbers and mathematical, let's say, universal things that are happening with our years, with the universe, with this spiritual meaning. And I love the this year in terms of being the 9 and letting go many things, because also letting go for me has been a challenge about the way I have always been in
Hmm.
terms of being, let's say, controlling, trying to control many aspects of my life, and sometimes the aspects of the life around the people that I love, and
Hmm.
usually having some struggles or barriers or things that I'm facing with them. So it's about letting go all that way of being and getting into a new way of just understanding that I have to be concerned about my own life, my own direction, and then things are going to settle down, no?
Yeah. Can I give you my take on your feet?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, so absolutely. So we tend to see kind of like our feet, our legs, and up to our hips as kind of like movement. So it's all about the direction that we're wanting to go in. And you're absolutely right. That right foot or right leg is usually a resistance to keep going in the direction that we're going, and so something needs to change, right, in that. And with being your heels, sometimes it is absolutely about digging in your heels about something and a complete resistance into what you're wanting to do, right? So you were telling me the story about your dog earlier today,
Yeah,
and that resistance of moving forward. It's the same thing, which is so interesting. That you're both going
it's
through
a
resistance.
mirror.
I don't want to do this.
It's a mirror. It's a mirror, probably that was brought to me by with her,
Yeah.
and and her resistance to walk and to take just these
That direction.
short strolls. No.
Yeah, absolutely. And then control keeps us safe, right? So that's the thing, is like, where do you draw that line? Because control sometimes is a trauma response as well. So it's looking in, controlling keeps me safe, keeps others safe. That's what I'm trying to do. But it's getting to that stage is the beautiful thing in my world is once you realize a pattern, once you understand it, it's time, it doesn't serve you anymore.
Mm,
So your control has served you up until a certain point, and now it doesn't anymore. So you don't need it. So it's come up. So it's come up to be released,
yeah.
right? Which is so interesting. And on my side, I went to go see a doctor today because for the last maybe 2, 3 months, I've been ignoring my shoulders being sore. And I think it's just because I put on a little bit of weight, well, more than I'm used to. And it's so funny because I'm like, oh, I have to do the work.
Mm,
So for me, sometimes not only finding out what it is, but you can actually have a conversation with
mm,
that body part. And I know it sounds totally bizarre, but that
no.
part will tell you what's wrong with it, why it's upset, why it's angry. So when I looked at mine, because now I'm starting to get less range of motion, so it's starting to annoy me now. Because talking about pain, I have quite a high pain threshold, so I ignore it until I'm not mobile.
Oh,
Which is not good either,
no.
right? So looking at mine is so everything on the right hand side is masculine. So it's like, okay, it's something about a doing thing that I'm doing or a process or whatever it is. When we start looking at shoulders, especially inwards, it's about like taking on responsibilities that are not mine. And
Mm,
it's the flexibility of movement with joints is usually flexibility. So somebody that has arthritis, they tend to be quite perfectionists
mm,
in not wanting to move. So, it's all about, how do I freely be me or allow myself to pivot? Because my business is pivoting at the moment to start supporting businesses to do conscious business. So it's like, going back into that corporate world again, you know, but it's just that's exactly where it's needed, right? So it's about changing that direction. So a little bit of my old kind of limitations, because I was very comfortable in dealing on a one-to-one, you know, or dealing with people, and I don't need people to buy into my stuff. Those that are ready will find it. But I've been carrying a lot of what's not mine, right? And that again, or trying to hold it all together, right? Is what's coming up for me, which is so interesting that that is just like, okay, maybe I don't. Maybe I can hand over responsibility. My kids are getting old enough and they need to take responsibility for their own actions sometimes,
Mm.
right? Because it's like, oh, you didn't do this, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, what do you mean? I told you, you're not listening. You know, what do you like? It's like take responsibility, but I need to let them take that responsibility, right? So I think that's what's coming in with this kind of like, you know, this feeling of like I can't drop the ball, you know, I have to, and I can't ask for help, and it actually starts to physically manifest in different areas, right?
Yeah.
So it's so strange that we start, not strange, it's absolutely beautiful that our body is this amazing feedback mechanism that tells us, hey, sort your stuff out because something's not right, you know, kind of a thing. You don't need to keep doing this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it knows where the pain has to be so that you
Yeah.
pay attention and understand what is happening. And sometimes it gives you these mirrors in your people around you or in your animals that we
Yep.
were speaking also.
So
No?
animals are quite interesting in the sense that whenever I've treated an animal, I've always treated its owner.
Mm,
I'll
yeah,
tell you why, because animals usually tend to
absorb,
take
no?
away our illnesses, but absorb them, yeah, or to a certain extent, they tend to carry our illnesses for us a lot of the times. So there was this one of my clients, the dog had anxiety whenever they left, but I'd always treat both of them together because that's how I found out it works, because one is a reflection of the other. It's almost like their nervous systems are kind of like intertwined with us as well.
Yes, I agree. I agree, and I think that that is also the way that it happens, so that we can react and reflect about it. Because we said, well, why is this dog not doing something or having these issues, no? And sometimes it gives you a lot of meaning and opens and very wide way of seeing the perspective of your own life. And
So true.
understanding what is happening and why in first instant why this kind of dog
Yeah.
arrived to the life,
Mhm.
no, of your own, and then how it reflects many of the things that you are dealing with.
Yeah.
And talking about also what you were saying about sometimes being stubborn with pain and trying to cope until you have these big issues that now you can't move sometimes. I understand perfectly, and I'm also like that many times, mostly because I was also let's say trained to withstand the pain in the endurance in the competitions that I had with swimming. When I practiced this open water swimming, I needed to handle the pain with the mind
Yeah.
and just, I mean, keep going until I finish the race or whatever it was.
Hmm.
And it is amazing how your brain can understand when you need to withstand this kind of pain in order to sometimes survive. Sometimes it's just a competition, but
Yeah.
it gives you this the strength to do that. And also that strength is what creates in you this resilience for life. No?
It might create the resilience for life, which is amazing. But what's also happening is you've stored that trauma somewhere in your body because you weren't able to deal with it at that time. It's important to go back and deal with it because otherwise it surfaces later on in life.
Hmm. Yeah, but
which
both
is
sides. I
important.
mean,
So
both
both sides of it is important because sometimes you do need to do that, right? Because it.
those signals and that stress, that anxiety, that pain from the mother in the womb.
Mhm.